Lesia Vasylenko, my apologies, is a Ukrainian member of parliament. She's in Strasbourg, France. Hi, Ms. Vasylenko. Good to meet you.
Good evening. Good to meet you too.
I appreciate you making time for our program. I wanted to start off on the subject of countries moving some diplomatic presence back to Ukraine. Canada is considering it right now. The U.S. has decided to send some diplomats back to Lviv. How significant from your perspective, how important is it for countries to go back to Ukraine?
A lot of embassies are coming back to Kyiv at the moment, and that means that life is coming back to Kyiv. Ukraine has a control over Kyiv, over the security situation, and of course that would be a very, very strong signal of support to the Ukrainian people who remain in their towns and in their homes fighting off Russian aggression.
And I know there is some discussion about starting, for example, in the U.S. case in Lviv and then eventually making their way back to Kyiv. How important is it that Kyiv especially be the place for diplomats to resume life, to resume work?
Kyiv is the capital of Ukraine, and Kyiv is where it all happens. Our president remains in Kyiv, our government remains in Kyiv, parliament operates completely in Kyiv, so it's only normal for diplomats to come back to Kyiv where they can operate fully and completely in coordination with the Ukrainian authorities.
I also, Ms. Vasylenko, want to ask you about the state of the war right now. And more specifically, for the past number of weeks, we've been talking about Russia's increased aggression in the east and what weapons Ukraine needs in order to fight back. And we've seen a number of announcements, particularly in the United States, but also here in Canada, of more heavy artillery being supplied to Ukraine. Could you isolate for us or explain for us what kind of help that will be, but also what might still be missing or what still might be needed?
All the lists of weapons are already on the tables of government leaders and of country leaders across the world. Ukraine needs more ammunition, I can tell you that. Ukraine needs more tanks, and we need aircrafts to ward off Russia's aggression in all of its forms across the territory of Ukraine. We are extremely grateful, of course, to the government of Canada and to all the other governments who have made the immense effort to supply weapons and armaments to Ukraine and to the Ukrainian army. This is extremely needed if Ukraine is to fight this war on its own, and we are able to do this with the military help that's been provided to us by our partners.
And what about the talks that at various points of this war have been going on, have not been going on? We saw over the weekend, there were reports that Putin has basically given up on the idea of any kind of diplomatic solution. What do you, first of all, read into that, or what is your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, Putin cannot be trusted. Whatever he says, you just don't take his word for it. It can mean anything. And essentially, all of Putin's words have translated into action in the form of aggression and attacks on Ukraine, especially on the civilian population of Ukraine. So with that in mind, Ukraine sticks to its goal to protect itself, to protect its people, and to bring back peace and security to Europe and the world.
The UN Secretary General is, however, meeting with Putin and then coming to Ukraine to meet President Zelensky. I know President Zelensky has been critical of the order in which that's happening. Your perspective on that?
I'm absolutely critical of that. I don't see how it will help things by going to Putin, getting no's from him, and then bringing those no's back to Ukraine. I would see it in a more fit manner to come first to Ukraine, see all the devastation, see all the war crimes and crimes against humanity that the Russian army has committed in the territory of Ukraine, speak to the people of Ukraine, and then go to Putin with that and ask him how much of that he's going to pay for and how soon is he going to get his armies out of Ukraine.
Putting aside the order for a second, do you think the UN can be of any use here, or do you have your doubts?
The UN needs reform, and heavy reform at that. The UN has failed to do the one thing it has been established to do, to provide peace and security in the world. it has failed in big time, because Russia, the biggest aggressor in the world, sits on the Security Council and has a veto power. Russia, the very reason for insecurity in the world. Thus, the UN needs to be reformed. We have talked about this time and time again under many circumstances. I think the time is now, and the Secretary General of the UN could go down in history by being the man who reforms the system which has failed.
Do you think, as far as the talks are concerned, though, the UN or the Secretary General himself might have some utility?
Oh, definitely, but they need to revise completely their agenda and their approach to peace and security in the world.
And how would you contextualize for us, if you could, or sort of assess for us where the possibility for any productivity in these talks, and I completely take your point that Putin can't be trusted, and I'm in no way trying to countervail that or counteract that, but I am just sort of, I guess, wondering on behalf of our viewers who have seen a number of news reports over the past 8 weeks. Oh, there's talks happening. Maybe there's some positive signs. Like, how would you contrast now and any talks that take place now with ones that have taken place previously?
Talks are happening, you are right in that, but talks are happening as to the humanitarian corridors which are need to be provided. Talks are happening as to exchange of prisoners of war. Talks are happening around the saving of innocent lives. But apart from that, there can be no talks, because Russia has stubbornly said that they don't recognize Ukraine as a nation, and has stubbornly followed through with their line that they are performing some kind of liberation operation over Ukraine. But we must all be aware that this operation, liberation as they call it, is in fact operation for the reinstatement of a Russian empire. And Ukraine is fighting hard, so hard, to make sure that empires stay a thing in the past.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Vasylenko. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.